Hello and welcome to another episode of the Classical Republican. Today we're talking about the Constitution of the Roman Republic from 1849. Okay, so during the Revolutionary year of 1848, there were all these unsuccessful revolutions. There is one that at the end of the year that takes place, and it is successful. So that was in Rome, and its territory took much of Italy, not all of it, as we understand Italy today. Um, and who was one of their leaders? Giuseppe Mazzini. So, classical Republican. Now, let's talk about the Constitution. Now, it begins with the rights and duties of citizens. And this is obviously a callback to a shout out to Mazzini's The Duties of Man. Article 15, all power comes from the people. So, but it is a mixed regime, and there are checks and balances, but based on, all sovereignty comes from the people. Article 19, they lay out the assembly. So what they do is they take the population, divide them up into 20,000 district or 20 districts that have 20,000 people, best they can, and that's the number of representatives they have. So there's no limit. There's no limit on the number of representatives they have. And so I looked up the population in 1850 in Italy, and and I did the math, and it would come out to about 1,250 members of the assembly. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Um, that's kind of like the Grand Council in Venice. Article 20, they all have 3-year terms. So they get the legislature is elected. It seems to have one election, and they have 3-year terms, so it sits for 3 years. Some of the other officers the executive officers are not like that. I'll get into that in a minute. In the assembly, they have a quorum. It's half plus one. Now, laws can be proposed by any representative, or the consulate. And I'll get to that in a minute. Laws are passed after 2 readings, separated by 8 days. So you have some time to think about things. That's always a good thing. Also, the separate readings, I think in normal English or American parliamentary procedure, you have 3 readings, and that kind of comes from the time when you didn't really have you didn't have a printing press, and it was hard to get the bills out to the different members. So they would all have to assemble, and it would be read by the clerk. Now they have 2 readings, except during emergencies. So there's some emergency powers there for you. And then you have, in Article 33, you have the consulate, and there are 3 consuls. They have to be 30 years of age. They're elected by the assembly with a 2/3 majority. Okay, 2/3 majority. So it's a super majority. Very good. Very Republican. Article 34, consuls have 3-year terms. Each year one leaves and cannot be elected again until 3 years have passed. So they use the excellent form of term limits. Okay, there's 2 types of term limits you can watch in my term limit video. One is where you can serve a few terms, and then you're done, and you can't run for that office ever again. And that's what I call the bad kind. And then there's the good kind of term limits, where you can serve maybe a few, maybe a couple, of terms, and then you have to wait a while. Somebody else takes your place. And if you're so hot, you can run again and get elected for another few terms. So, yeah, so they have the 3 years, and then you have to wait 3 years. So that's excellent. Gives other people a chance to get in and get, get that, do their service. In Article 35, there are 7 ministers appointed by the consuls. They have internal affairs, foreign affairs, war and navy, finance, grace and justice, agriculture, commerce, industry, and public works, worship, public education, and fine arts, and the last one is charity. So yeah, charity. It's interesting. They have charity. Being that Mazzini doesn't have a lot of respect for charity. He believes that he says it's good, but what is superior to charity is mutual aid. And so I guess if you look at it, from a statist perspective, not everyone is going to be in an association. Not everyone can be in an association. So you're going to have some people fall through the cracks, and therefore it is the state's duty to help them out and give them a chance. So I guess charity would fit there. Article 46, there is a council of state. There are 15 counselors appointed by the assembly, and they give regulations delegated by the assembly. Article 57, the army is formed by volunteer conscription. And there's also National Guard militias. Also very Republican. You have a standing army, but it's voluntary, and then you have the National Guard. So I guess checks and balances there. Article 63, constitutional amendments require can only come from 1/3 of the assembly requesting in the last year of the legislature. Okay. And then they have to deliberate for 2 months, and they can only pass by a 2/3 majority. So there you have it. That's the Constitution of the Roman Republic in 1849. It only lasted a year, and then the French, as they have a habit of doing, coming and destroying perfectly good republics. So until next time, long live the Republic.